He just wanted a simple meal at his own diner. But then a sound stopped him. A waitress sobbing in the kitchen. His stomach clenched. What was happening behind those doors? He built this place with trust, but was it all a lie? His managers said everything was fine, but this moment told him otherwise. And once he stepped inside that kitchen, there was no turning back. Would he regret what he was about to uncover? Jacob Reed had spent a decade building this diner empire, a business founded on trust, respect, and family values. But today, as he stepped through the doors of one of his locations, something felt different. The smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air, but beneath it, something else. A tension that weighed heavy, unseen yet undeniable. He glanced around. The once vibrant walls now faded and dull. The flickering lights overhead cast uneasy shadows across the tired faces of his employees. A waitress approached Megan. A forced smile, eyes carrying exhaustion beyond her years. "Welcome. Can I get you something to drink?" Jacob nodded, his gaze shifting past her, to the manager Rick barking orders from across the room. Employees flinched at his voice, moving faster, heads down, afraid to meet his eye. He had read reports, everything is fine. Business is running smoothly. But was it? A group of customers at the counter grumbled. Service was slow. Staff looked drained. There was no warmth in the place he had built with care. Jacob sipped his coffee, but the bitterness was not just in the taste. His gut twisted. Something was off. And then the moment that changed everything. A soft, muffled sound from the kitchen. Sobbing. Jacob froze. A waitress crying behind closed doors. Why? And why was everyone pretending not to hear? He set his cup down. This was no longer just a meal. This was a reckoning. And he was about to uncover a truth that could destroy everything. Jacob sat in the corner of his own empire, a silent observer in a kingdom he no longer recognized. His fingers curled around the warm coffee cup, but his attention was elsewhere. He scanned the room, expecting to see what he had built. Loyal employees, satisfied customers, a thriving business. Instead, he saw something broken. Employees moved like ghosts, their energy drained, their smiles forced. Customers shifted in their seats, frustration flickering in their eyes as they checked their watches. Conversations were laced with impatience. His gut twisted. What happened to the place he had poured his heart into? The reports had been clear. Business was running smoothly. His managers had assured him. The team was happy, operations were strong. But the truth sat right in front of him, undeniable. His eyes followed Megan, the waitress who had served him earlier. Her movements were rushed, her shoulders tense. A single mistake, a drink slightly off, earned her a glare from the manager Rick. "Move faster," Rick snapped. "You are falling behind again." Jacob felt the heat rise in his chest, but he kept still, watching. Megan barely nodded, lowering her head. There was no argument. No defense. Only exhaustion. Then came a memory. Those corporate meetings where his managers had downplayed concerns. Staff turnover? Just part of the business. Complaints? A few, but nothing serious. Low morale? No evidence of that. He had trusted them. He had believed them. But now? He saw the cracks in the foundation, the lies buried beneath sugar-coated words. Had he been blind? Too trusting? Too distant? His jaw tightened. No more reports. No more assurances. Today, he would uncover the truth himself. And if his managers had been lying about this, what else had they been hiding? Jacob watched as Megan rushed past his table, a tray balanced in one hand, a notepad clutched in the other. Her movements were frantic, her breath uneven. Then a voice cut through the diner like a knife. "Megan! Move faster. Do I have to do everything myself? Rick, the manager, stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Megan flinched. Her hands trembled as she placed a plate on a customer's table. She did not speak. She did not argue. And neither did anyone else. The other employees kept their heads down, focused on their work, pretending not to hear. Jacob's grip tightened around his coffee cup. How long had this been happening? His managers had told him the team was like family. But this was fear. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. Megan forced a small smile as she turned to the next table, but Jacob noticed something. It never reached her eyes. She laughed when customers cracked jokes. She nodded politely. She even apologized when a drink order took too long. But there was strain in her voice. And Jacob knew that kind of exhaustion does not come from a long shift. Comes from something deeper. A memory surfaced, his company's mission statement. We treat our employees like family. His stomach twisted. What kind of family lets their own suffer in silence? Then he saw it. Megan stepped back from a table. The moment seemed harmless, until Jacob caught the way her hand brushed against her wrist. Just for a second, just enough for him to see. A faint bruise, a mark that did not belong. And in that instant Jacob knew. This was not just bad management. This was something far worse. And he was about to uncover every hidden truth. A customer sighed, tapping his fingers against the table. His voice was sharp. This is taking forever. What kind of place is this? Megan rushed over, her voice gentle, controlled. I am so sorry for the wait. Let me. A voice cut through the diner like a whip. Maybe if you stopped slacking, we would not have this issue. Rick. The room froze. Megan's face went pale. Rick did not stop there. You make excuses for everything. Maybe this is not the job for you. Humiliation burned in her eyes, but she nodded, lips pressed together. I understand, she whispered. The entire diner was silent. No one spoke. No one dared. Jacob's hands tightened around his coffee cup, his knuckles turning white. His pulse pounded in his ears. He could feel his own anger rising. He had built this place to be a home, a business that treated people with respect. But what he saw now, it was not just poor management. It was something worse. A system built on fear, control, and cruelty. And now he had a choice. Stand up, or stay silent. What he did next would define everything. Jacob's gaze locked onto Rick. The way he stood, the way he spoke down to people, the way he smirked when no one fought back. Rick never lifted a finger. He barked orders but never worked. He criticized but never helped. And worst of all, he divided them. Jacob watched how employees avoided eye contact, how they hurried, fearful of making a mistake. Rick had done more than just run this place. He ruled it. He took long breaks while his staff struggled. He played them against each other, picking favorites, making them compete for approval. And somehow in all these years no one had stopped him. Jacob's chest felt tight. How many other managers like him were hidden in his business? How many others had suffered in silence just like Megan? Jacob set his coffee down. Enough. This had to end. And it would end today. The clatter of dishes. The hum of conversation. But Connor heard something else. Megan's muffled sniffle as she wiped her eyes. She had not had a break in hours. Connor's grip tightened around the spatula. His voice was low but firm. She has not stopped all day. Rick's head snapped toward him. Mind your own business, Connor. Silence. Connor clenched his fists. He wanted to speak. He wanted to fight back. But Rick's glare warned him, step out of line and you will regret it. Connor dropped his gaze, pressing his lips together. Jacob saw it all. The quiet defiance. The way Connor's fists shook at his sides. There was still hope, because even in a place ruled by fear, one voice, one act of courage could change everything. Jacob waited. He watched. Rick barked orders. Megan kept moving. The staff worked in silent obedience. This was a business built on control, exhaustion, fear. Jacob's jaw tightened. If he revealed himself now, would it help? Would it be enough? Or would the damage already be done? He took one last look around. The tired eyes. The forced smiles. The unspoken pain. Tomorrow he would not be a silent observer. Tomorrow, he would act. Jacob set his coffee cup down, watching as Megan rushed past. Her hands trembled slightly as she wiped the counter. He finally spoke. "You doing okay?" Megan hesitated. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, fear. Then she forced a smile. "Yeah, I am fine." Her voice wavered, betraying the lie. Jacob noticed everything. The exhaustion in her eyes, the weight in her shoulders. She was afraid. Afraid to speak the truth. He did not press her. Not yet. Instead, he made a note in his mind. Why was she afraid to tell the truth? Jacob stirred his coffee. His test had begun. He spoke casually, yet with purpose. "Seems like she is doing all the work." Rick turned, eyes narrowing. His response came quick, sharp. "She is too slow. That is on her." The room shifted. Employees overheard. No one spoke. No one looked up. Jacob watched them. The silence was louder than any words. Rick had control here. Megan glanced at Jacob. Confusion. Caution. Why was a stranger defending her? Rick sensed it too. His authority had been challenged without a single direct word. His grip on the diner was strong. But Jacob had just loosened the first thread. Was Rick's control so deep that no one dared question him? Jacob flipped open his small leather notebook. His pen moved swiftly across the page. Payroll figures. Shift schedules. Staff turnover. Numbers never lied. He noted one undeniable pattern. Megan was overworked. Rick? Nowhere in sight. He barely moved from the front. Never lifted a single plate. Never helped. Jacob's eyes flicked toward the kitchen. Connor, the young cook, was watching him. Nervous. Hesitant. As if sensing something was shifting. Jacob closed his notebook. This was no longer just an observation. He was gathering evidence. A sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, miss. My food is cold." Megan turned, forcing a polite smile. "I am so sorry about that. Let me." A shadow loomed over her. "Rick." His voice loud and biting. "How many times do I have to tell you?" His eyes burned into her. "Stop screwing up." Silence. The diner froze. Customers shifted in their seats, avoiding the scene. Megan's fingers clenched around her notepad. "I will fix it," she whispered. Rick scoffed. Louder this time. Crueler. "Yeah? Maybe if you actually listened, we wouldn't have this problem." Connor, behind the kitchen window, muttered under his breath. Rick's head snapped toward him. "What was that?" Connor lowered his gaze. "Back down." Jacob gripped his cup tighter. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. How much more would she endure before she broke? Megan stared at the floor, her fingers tightening around the pen in her hand. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I have nowhere else to go." 6 words. Jacob felt them like a gut punch. There was no anger in her voice, no defiance, only resignation. A lifetime of struggle wrapped in that single sentence. Jacob inhaled sharply. His hands curled into fists beneath the table. This was no longer about a toxic manager. This was about dignity. Rick walked past, not even sparing her a glance. To him, she was nothing. Jacob gritted his teeth. Something inside him snapped. Jacob pressed his hands against the table. He stood. His voice cut through the tension, sharp, controlled. "That is enough." The diner froze. Customers looked up. Forks hovered midair. Rick whirled around, eyes narrowing. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Megan stiffened. Her breath caught. Connor's head snapped up from the kitchen. Jacob held Rick's gaze, unwavering. The food was cold. She apologized. That should have been the end of it. Rick scoffed. "Oh, so now we have a hero? You think you can waltz in here and—" "Enough," Jacob repeated. His voice dropped, but it carried weight. Rick hesitated. The silence shifted. Megan was frozen. Eyes wide. Disbelief. Connor's grip tightened on a plate. Hope. Customers exchanged looks. Recognition. This was it. The moment that would change everything. Jacob inhaled deeply. Steady. Controlled. His fingers moved to the rim of his glasses. Rick smirked, arms crossed. "Go ahead, tough guy. Say something." Jacob exhaled slowly. Then, with a deliberate motion, he removed his glasses. The room shifted. Megan's eyes widened. Connor's knife slipped from his grip, clattering onto the counter. Rick's smirk vanished. Jacob's voice was calm but firm. "My name is Jacob Reed." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. "And I own this place." A single heartbeat passed. Then another. The air felt thick. Unmovable. Rick's face drained of color. His posture stiffened. His fingers twitched at his sides. Jacob let the words settle. Let the weight of them sink into the walls, the floors, the people. Megan's lips parted, but no words came. Shock. Disbelief. A glimmer of something else, hope. Connor swallowed hard. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Rick forced a laugh, though it was weak. "Nice joke," he muttered. "Real funny." Jacob did not blink. Did not move. The reckoning had begun. The words hung in the air, sharp as a blade. "That is enough." The diner froze. Rick's smirk twisted into something else. Uncertainty. He scanned the room, searching for support. No one spoke. No one moved. Megan's grip on her notepad tightened. Her breath hitched, but she dared not look up. Connor stood motionless in the kitchen. Wide-eyed. Silent. The customers exchanged wary glances, sensing a shift they did not understand but could feel. Rick laughed, forced and hollow. "Excuse me." Jacob stood firm. His voice calm. Unshaken. "You heard me." Rick's nostrils flared. Challenge burned in his eyes. The balance had shifted, and for the first time Rick was not in control. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Jacob inhaled deeply, then slowly removed his glasses. Rick's smirk faltered. His eyes darted, searching, desperate. You cannot be," Rick stammered, voice cracking. Jacob's gaze never wavered. Megan gasped, her notepad slipping in her grip. Connor's spatula clattered against the counter. Customers whispered in hushed tones, their eyes darting between the two men. Jacob stepped forward. Calm. Unshaken. Absolute. "I built this place, Rick. And I am taking it back." A muscle twitched in Rick's jaw. He forced a chuckle, thin and hollow. "Taking it back? What, just because you waltz in here, think you?" Jacob raised a hand. Rick stopped mid-sentence. "You lied to me." His voice measured. "You abused my employees. You turned my diner into a place of fear." Rick swallowed hard. Megan inched back. Connor stood frozen. A single bead of sweat slid down Rick's temple. "But you will not intimidate me," Jacob continued, stepping closer. Rick's breath hitched. For the first time, his authority wavered. Would he surrender? Or would he fight for control? Rick straightens his shoulders, forcing a smirk. "You do not know what it is like here," he scoffs. "I do what I have to do." Jacob's stare does not waver. His voice is cold steel. "And humiliating your staff is what you have to do." Rick laughs bitterly, his eyes flicking toward Megan. "You think she is innocent? She is slow. She is weak." Megan flinches, but Jacob does not let it slide. "No, Rick." His tone sharpens. "She is stronger than you ever were. And that is why you are finished." Rick's smirk cracks. His fingers curl into fists. Cornered. But a man like Rick does not go down quietly. Rick steps forward, his body rigid with tension. His voice is low, dangerous. You cannot just fire me." Jacob meets his gaze, unwavering. His voice is calm, but it carries weight. "Watch me." A breathless silence spreads through the diner. Megan's fingers tighten around her notepad. Connor leans forward, gripping the counter. The rest of the staff dare not move, but something in their eyes flickers, hope. Rick's fists clench at his sides. His breath comes short, fast. "You think this place will run without me?" His voice wavers with a mix of rage and fear. Jacob's expression does not change. "You were never running it. You were breaking it. One last chance. Will Rick back down? Or will he make things worse?" Jacob raises his phone, dialing with calm precision. "Get HR down here. We are making changes today." Rick stiffens. A flicker of fear crosses his face before anger overtakes it. You cannot do this." His voice shakes with fury. Jacob meets his gaze. "I just did." A hushed murmur ripples through the diner. Staff exchange glances, a mix of relief and disbelief. Rick laughs bitterly, a desperate, humorless sound. "You think they are on your side?" Silence. Then Connor steps forward, his voice firm. "You did this to yourself." Rick's eyes dart across the room, searching for support. But there is none. Megan lowers her notepad, exhaling for the first time in what feels like hours. The tension in her shoulders uncoils. Rick stares at Jacob, then at the exit. His reign is over, and he knows it. Rick pushes through the doors, his face twisted with bitterness. Customers lean away, sensing the storm in his steps. He throws one final glare over his shoulder, eyes burning with resentment. Then he is gone. Silence settles over the diner. But this time it is different. It is not fear. It is relief. Megan clutches her notepad, breath shaky. "Is this real?" Her voice is barely above a whisper. Jacob nods, his tone gentler now. "It is real." Connor lets out a low whistle, shaking his head. This place might finally have a chance. Justice was served. But now change must begin. Jacob turns to the staff, eyes steady, voice firm. "We fix this. Starting now." Megan blinks, still processing everything. Jacob pulls out his phone, dialing corporate. New leadership. Better wages. Schedules that work. And a manager who actually cares. Connor crosses his arms, watching him closely. Megan hesitates, then asks, "Why?" Jacob meets her gaze, a small smile forming. "Because I built this place to be a family." His voice softens. "And family looks out for each other." Connor shakes his head, grinning. "Never thought I'd see the day." Megan lets out a breath, wiping her eyes. For the first time in a long time, it feels like hope. The storm has passed. But the real work is just beginning. For the first time in months, the diner feels peaceful. The tension that clung to the air like a storm cloud is gone. Employees exchange glances, relief, disbelief, and something else. Hope. Megan grips the counter, her hands trembling. She whispers, "Is this real?" A deep breath fills the room, as if they can finally exhale. Customers notice it too, the way the staff moves lighter, freer. Connor watches as Megan blinks away tears. She does not say a word. She does not have to. The storm has passed, but what comes next? Connor leans against the counter, wiping his hands on his apron. "Never thought I'd see the day." Megan finally lifts her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really fired him?" Jacob nods, his expression calm, certain. "And it's just the beginning." The words settle in the air. The realization dawns slowly. Megan presses a hand to her chest, her breath unsteady. "I do not know what to say." Jacob meets her eyes, voice steady. "Then do not say anything." A pause. His voice softens. "Just breathe." The weight is gone. For the first time in weeks, someone smiles. Sometimes freedom feels unreal until you finally taste it. Jacob turns to Megan, his voice steady. "I need someone I can trust." Megan blinks, caught off guard. "Trust for what?" Jacob leans against the counter, his gaze unwavering. "To help fix this place. To lead." The words hang in the air. Megan stares at him, stunned. "Lead?" Her fingers curl slightly against the counter. For so long she had been overlooked, underestimated. She searches Jacob's face for hesitation. But there is none. He means it. Is this really happening? Jacob reaches into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. It's official. He places it in front of Megan. "You're the new assistant manager." Megan's breath catches. "Me." Her voice shakes. "But I..." Jacob interrupts, gently but firmly. "No more but. You have already been leading. It is time to make it official." Silence falls over the room. Then a single clap. "Connor." The sound echoes, breaking the stillness. Then another. And another. Soon the entire staff is clapping. Megan blinks rapidly, tears slipping free. For the first time in her life, someone truly saw her. Not as someone struggling to keep up. Not as someone trying to get by. But as someone who mattered. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was finally living. Some people wait their whole lives to be seen. Today Megan was seen. Jacob glances around the diner, seeing it differently. For months he had looked at this place as a failing business. Numbers, losses, management flaws. But it was never about profits. It was about people. Megan, who showed up every day, even when she felt invisible. Connor, who stayed silent because speaking up meant risking his job. The waitresses, the cooks, the staff. Each one surviving, not living. He thought he was here to fix broken finances. But he was not just saving a diner. He was saving the people inside it. And that was worth more than any paycheck. Some things are bigger than business. Some things are worth fighting for. Jacob grabs his coat, heading for the door. Behind him, the diner feels different. Lighter. Freer. Megan's voice stops him. "Wait, what happens now?" Jacob pauses, then turns back, smiling. "You tell me." For the first time, Megan does not hesitate. She glances around, at Connor, at the staff, at the customers who finally see them. She already looked like a leader. Jacob watches as she steps forward, helping a struggling waitress. He does not need to say anything. She is ready. Jacob takes a final look at the place he built. He once thought leaving would feel like losing something, but today walking away meant something else. For the first time, he was leaving knowing everything would be okay. He built this place, but now it finally belongs to the people who deserve it. If this story moved you, do not forget to like, comment, and share. Everyone deserves a chance to be seen. Subscribe for more powerful real-life stories that inspire change. What would you have done in Jacob's place? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters.